We're back with another relocation rundown. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Geoff.
Aaron.
We're the Aaron and Geoff team at Compass, your Bronx residential real estate specialists. And we have an amazing guest with us today, Allie Davis, out in Boston. Allie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is so much fun to chat with you guys. I met Aaron at our Compass retreat a few months ago,
Yeah.
so it's like fun to chat again and be back.
Yeah, I mean, those retreats are so valuable. It just goes to show the network that you can build. And it's one of the big priorities and has been for us and for our business is finding people we trust in all these other markets who we can rely on because so often people will want to move from New York to, let's say, Boston.
Yeah.
And
I
so
know. I
that's,
feel like everyone on the East Coast is just constantly up and down.
Yeah, basically. I mean, like a lot of my friends, like when I graduated high school and they were going off to college, like a lot of them went to Boston. Like so many. So I know a lot of people in Boston. So I'm excited to talk to you about relocating there because I know you have a lot of experience with that. You want to tell us about it?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a Greater Boston realtor. I used to live in the city and now I live in the suburbs, but I'm originally from Maryland. So I myself relocated to Boston and fell in love with the city. And I actually have a funny perspective with it that I didn't mention to you guys, but I
Wait,
told my husband that I would never live in Boston. I didn't want to live in
really?
Massachusetts. Yeah, I was like, it's too cold. I'm like a warm weather girl.
Yeah,
I told him, 2 years I'll live in Boston, then we'll move back down to Maryland, where I'm from, or
yeah.
the DC area.
Hmm.
And after a year of renting in the city, we bought a house in the suburbs. Like I fell in love with it that quickly, and I feel like a lot of people experience that in Boston because it gets a rep. It gets a rep
Yeah,
of being really cold. The accents.
Dunkin' Donuts on
Expensive.
every corner.
Yeah, yep, yeah.
yeah.
Dunkin'. That is true though. There is a lot of
Uh,
Dunkin' Donuts, but
We have that too. So I don't know
yeah.
about that.
I feel like there's more of a balance of Dunkin' and Starbucks here.
Mm.
Whereas in Boston, I feel like there was almost no Starbucks.
I guess so, but
Yeah,
I'm
we
pretty
have
sure
them,
that,
but Dunkin's definitely the prominent chain.
yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
so I guess the first reaction I have to that is, calling Maryland a warm weather state. It just doesn't
I
make any
know. Well,
sense to me.
comparatively.
Comparatively, definitely.
Yeah, I grew up in South Florida, so that
Oh
took
my
me
gosh.
for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
will say University of Maryland's where I went to college, and that was the
Okay.
most northern college I applied to, for
Yeah.
example. So
yeah.
I've never been like a Northeast girly, but I am now.
So what changed for you?
Yeah. What made you love Boston?
Um,
Also, why'd you first move there?
So we moved here because my husband grew up here. So
Okay.
he grew up in Needham, which is in our Metro West area, about 20 minutes outside of the city, and just wanted to be closer to his family for a portion of our lives. We've been together for 10 years, so we spent most of that time in the beginning, at least down in Maryland, the DC area. But I think what made me fall in love with it is just that you can get so much from Boston. Like
Mhm.
you can really have all the experiences just in this small city. There are mountains for skiing. There's really beautiful winters. In the summer, you have the Cape, and people come from all over the country and the world to be on the Cape because it's just like quintessential, American summers. You also have so much history in the city. Like you can do the Freedom Trail walk and really learn about like America's past, and like that's super interesting.
Oh, we've done
The
it.
food's not as good as New York, but it's pretty good.
We had some pretty good food in Boston.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we went to
good.
a couple of really good restaurants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of just get, there's good shopping, the Prudential Center, Newberry Street, the best hospitals in the country. A lot of them are here.
Right.
We have, a lot of places for people going through cancer treatments, the level 3 NICU centers. There's great, brain, heart, spine centers. So like really people, I've had friends who have had some really sad medical experiences and they
Yeah.
didn't have to relocate or get a rental. They could live at home and go to the best hospitals in the country.
That's awesome.
Another big thing for me was that the public school systems are great here. So you don't have to, you can invest in private school if you want to, but you don't necessarily have to.
Right.
And that was a really big plus for me too, as like I can invest in real estate and not have to invest in private schools for when we have kids.
Right.
Um, you get what you pay for. There's a lot that you get, but it is expensive. So you get what you
Yeah.
pay for.
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably not too dissimilar from New York in that
Yeah.
way.
but I would assume that your price points are lower than where we are at this point.
Probably like a mix. Like what kind of price points are we working on?
Yeah, so in the city and Massachusetts as a state, it's about an average price point of 800,000.
Okay.
But of course, in the city, that could be like a studio, one bedroom, two
Yeah.
bedroom. But out where I am out in Natick, I think our average price point right now is around 900,000.
Okay.
And it really
And that's
depends. So, like, if you go into a town that has maybe, not as good as a school district, like you can get a lot of better savings living in that town versus some of like the best school districts around here. They're capping it like over a million, well over a million. So,
so is that all? I mean, generally you're dealing with single family homes. Is there much apartment complexes or apartment stock?
yeah, so there is. I feel like, most of the stock is single family homes just because a lot of it was built in the 50s out in the
Right.
suburbs, at least. In the city, it's going to be nearly all condos, apartments, some townhomes.
Yeah.
Like Southie has a lot of townhomes, but it kind of depends. And then in the suburbs, they're building a lot of new duplexes. They're
Oh,
building a lot of apartment buildings, a lot of condo buildings. And I think there's been incentives to kind of just make more places for people to live because our inventory is so low. So they're just trying to like shove more people into our limited space, which is tough for first time home buyers who like have their heart set on a single family home commuting into the city for work. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's a fun one.
yeah. Um, if you had all the money in the world, where in Boston would you live? What neighborhood?
Oh, that's a great question. I have like two personas. I have like my city person and I have my like rural, like I want a garden that spans acres person.
Let
So like
Let's
in
start with the city, and then we'll
the
move into
city,
your bucolic.
I know. I like my city and suburb life. In the city, if I had all the money in the world, I would get probably like a brownstone around the Boston Common. They're like just
Mm.
these gorgeous, quintessential, dozens of millions of dollars
But you
homes
might be
that are just,
haunted if you're that close to the Boston Common.
Oh, you'll
sorry.
that's
I said you might be haunted if you're that close to the Boston Common.
Who's to say? We do
um
have in Massachusetts, we have some rules around ghosts. If there is a known ghost entity, you have to disclose it if asked. But if there is not a known ghost entity, you don't have to disclose it.
I love that you know that because I know that about New York. It's pretty similar actually.
Yeah.
With the law. If you like invite the Ghostbusters or the ghost hunters into your home and like it's broadcast on TV, like you have to disclose it.
Mhm. Yeah, like we don't have to disclose a death in the unit unless it was like a murder.
Yeah,
Mm,
unless there's like a police report.
yeah. I think ours is only if asked for
Yeah.
that. But the other place I might consider if I had all the money in the world is
Yeah.
living in Charlestown. So that is right outside of the Boston Met, and it is just gorgeous on the water. A bunch of houseboats, big yachts.
Well,
Just very. It feels more like Cape Cod-esque just because you're by the water, and it feels less like historical than more just like by the water. I'm from Maryland, so it really reminds me a lot of like Annapolis. But
yeah, cool.
I did a summer in Annapolis.
oh,
So yeah, I get.
fun. Yeah.
Um, so tell us a little bit about where you think the best place to invest right now in Boston would be. Like, where do you see the most bang for your buck in the long?
Huh. So in Boston, as long as you are kind of near a metro stop, honestly, if you can get a
Yeah.
good price for something, and a lot of people are looking to put a bit of sweat equity into making something look nice, you really can't go wrong because we
Yeah.
are just having crazy appreciation. I think last year the reports were that our year-over-year appreciation in Boston was 5 to 11%, depending on the town. And this past year, the stats came out, and overall, it was 7.5%. So still in that range, but like 7.5% average is like significant. So honestly, if you can get into real estate here, like depending on where you want to go, like there's definitely pockets of each neighborhood that could be more profitable or not. In Massachusetts specifically, if you're open to looking wider, Worcester is one of the biggest up and coming cities in the country right now because it is
Really?
inexpensive to buy. Yeah, and it's the second biggest city in Massachusetts. It's much more affordable. So you can get in, you can buy multifamilies at this point. And then you can watch that appreciation ride over 20 years. So it kind of depends what your goal is. Is your goal to like have something to fall back on in 20 years in the city because you like it in the city? It will still appreciate. We can find specific properties that work for that. Or if you're looking bigger, we can find things in the suburbs or even as far as Worcester, which is about like 45 minutes, an hour west.
Are you generally working with more buyers, more sellers, or is it kind of a pretty balanced mix?
A balanced mix. So our team is about 60% sellers, 40% buyers, and I'm on Team Bell Property Partners out of Compass in Wellesley, Mass, which is about 20 minutes west of the city. Um, but I personally end up working with more buyers because I think of just my age and being a young professional. A lot of the people I know in my sphere of influence are buying.
Sure.
But so I do a little bit more buyer side than seller side, but we try to be as balanced as possible because then we can see both sides of the equation. We can understand what sellers are looking for and what the market looks like as we're looking at tons of offers coming in. On the other side, for buyers, we know what to be putting in to be competitive and win
Well,
offers.
that's kind of where I was going to go with the question, which is, are
Yeah.
you guys still in constant bidding war territory? Are you guys able to get deals done with financing? Are we waiving inspections and contingencies still? What's the market like?
It depends. We're seeing, I know it's like not a helpful answer, but we're seeing
It's
more
reality, huh?
That's
inspections.
reality.
Yeah, right. We're seeing more inspections than we were last year for sure.
Right.
We're also seeing a bit of a slowdown, especially during this time of year. We're recording this in December, so every December is much slower than it is in the spring. You know, in
Right.
2 months' time, I'm sure we will be back into like crazy town territory. I feel like our prices always jump up like 5% every spring, no matter what. Just because people come out and they're hungry for housing and they, you know, are doing those things like you mentioned, like waiving their financing contingency, waiving their inspections, you know, doing what they can to get a property. At least that's historically what's happened. You know, who's to say what will happen? I know that people have been hoping for interest rates to come down, and it looks like they may not be as much as we hoped they would be by the end of 2025, for example.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll have to see, but it really depends. So we tell our sellers too, it depends on how you price it. It is all where you start because if we are trying to ride this crazy appreciation that we're seeing and you're trying to overprice to try to get an aspirational number, you're risk sitting on the market and then you're not getting those crazy contracts. You're getting a more risky contract for a seller, and that's not what our sellers like to see. So it's just finding that right nuance of, you know, pricing it appropriately, but not, you know, underpricing it too much because that's also horrible, but not overpricing it so that it sits for a very long period of time and then you don't get those contracts. But it's interesting. It's a give and take. It's a lot of buyer education we have to do to help people understand the market. And, you know, the list price is a great indicator, but what matters is the sale price. You know, a property is only as worth as much as a buyer is willing to pay for it. So it's trying to
Really?
ramp people up. Yeah, right. I know, because like I mean, sometimes people will see a property and they're like, "Wow, like this is a great value," and I'm like, "What's that mean to you? If it's a great
Yeah.
value, it's probably going to sell for over. Like you have to like prepare for that, or if you think it's overpriced, it's been sitting for a while, like we can adjust for that too. But it's kind of just doing all of that education on the back end to make sure when people are ready to buy, they have the right expectations, the right understanding, and they're able to move forward with confidence.
Yeah. I mean, preparation and managing expectations is like 80% of the job, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about your background before real estate.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So I used to work in structural engineering
Yeah.
and I had a specialization in building enclosures. So that's like windows, air barriers, roofs, below grade waterproofing, the
Well,
envelope of a house.
the envelope.
Yeah, so I did civil engineering in school at the University of Maryland. And then I worked at Simpson, Gumpertz and Hager, which is one of the top structural engineering firms in the country. Got my professional engineering license. And then about a year after that, decided I wanted to do something that was more, you know, consumer oriented, sales
Yeah.
focused, consulting. I really enjoyed. And I decided to flip my education into real estate because if I knew buildings so well, I knew how to repair them. I knew the cost of repairs. I knew, you know, I was involved in litigations. I worked on tons of government buildings like Pentagon, National Gallery of Art, the Mass State House, and
Wow.
tons and tons and tons of condos, which are not as exciting. But I saw it all and I felt like that was a really valuable experience to want to use in my next career journey. And my clients, especially first time home buyers, find that so valuable because it's just somebody who knows a little bit more about the inner workings of buildings as they're trying to understand what is a good buy for them. So
Yeah.
People find it helpful. I find it interesting. It's a different perspective than most people have.
Do you have like a story about like how you like saved one of your buyers by like knowing more about structural engineering and like seeing something in a house that was just
Mm,
not something that anyone was looking out for?
And if not, just make one.
Yeah.
no, for sure. So I've had at least one buyer was looking at like a modular built structure, and like it was just like
Yeah.
weird crack patterns where I was just like, I don't know if I feel great about it, you know?
Yeah.
Similarly, like crack patterns are a very interesting thing to know about, like whether or not they're step cracks or the shear cracks. You can kind of tell a buyer a little bit more of the story of the property. You're like, this is what it might be experiencing. It might be a problem, it might not. Like there's also just these varying like, degrees of certainty.
Right.
I'm licensed still. I maintain my license, but I'm not insured for it. So I always tell people, I'm like, this is my gut feeling.
Yeah.
We should get a structural engineer out here to write it down on paper for a few $1,000s if you want to actually know for certain. But
You heard it
it's
here first.
helpful
If
to
you have
let
cracks
people
in your
like either
ceilings,
move
like,
forward with confidence or not. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that's such a valuable ad
yeah,
for your clients.
yeah, and we do a lot of I did a lot of window work, and I find myself like poking around, like taking close-up pictures and
Right.
videos and stuff that like a home buyer might just see a pretty kitchen, and I'm like, yeah, but like look at these, like see that part of the ceiling was painted recently, like that makes me suspicious that there was some water leakage at some point. Like let's get an inspector up there and look at the underside of the roof, and like
Right.
just like trying to dig deeper into the quality and the technical aspects of the house rather
Yeah.
than just seeing the beautiful house, which is also fun to look at. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we try to bridge that gap a little bit in that,
yeah.
I've been to a lot of inspections at this point, and so I pay as much
Yeah.
attention as I can.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I can tell what a copper pipe looks like, and I can understand that when a copper pipe is not attached to a copper pipe, that's a problem, right? Like little, certain things I can start to pick up on and flag as I'm going through, but I don't have that education. So I definitely appreciate what kind of value that brings to your buyers.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that I provide perspective on too is so I did building enclosures. So it was basically keeping the inside and the outside outside, making everything nice, temperate, livable. And
Yeah.
so one of the big things that some buyers don't appreciate is the power of water.
Oh,
If there is a basement with water infiltration, they're like, "Oh, we can fix that." And I'm like, "You really might not be able
Oh,
to."
girl.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, the power of water is like a very great force in the world.
Yeah.
Like you certainly could maybe you could go to put a sump pump in there. You could do a French drain. You could like do some spray on waterproofing or damp proofing. But like at the end of the day, like you gotta just be okay with that or not be okay with that because
Yeah.
there's no guarantee that you can stop the world's faucet from turning off.
Right. And like just because it's okay today, it doesn't mean it's going to be okay tomorrow.
yeah.
100%.
I
Yeah. But
mean,
the
we're
amount of
getting more
waterproofing
water
projects
every
I
year.
did, I'm like, whew, that is a
Right.
expensive one for sure that you might not ever fix.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. We have a listing now that we've been dealing with some they had to deal with some water issues. So when I'm showing, I'm like, look at all the work they did for mitigation. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's expensive and it's like not a pretty investment because it's just kind of
No.
getting it
Yeah.
back to like square one and it's not something like adding new cabinets or,
No.
refinishing your floors.
Right.
It's
Right.
some of those invisible costs, but it is a necessary one.
Absolutely. I mean, this house has like a driveway that descends into the basement. So exactly. So
That's
part of
wow.
what they've had to do, other than adding more French drains, was they actually raised a portion of the driveway by the curb so that it's higher than the curb level, and the water goes the other
Mm,
way towards the street.
yeah,
But
it's hard.
it's still
Yeah, it's hard.
it's still just water is going to find its way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your favorite part of being on the sales side as opposed to on this engineer side?
I think it's definitely the people and just like helping people and having a very upfront, influential, you know, front seat experience to
Yeah.
somebody's goals coming true, and being the one to deliver the good news and the one who's able to help them through kind of the rocky periods too. I feel like something I really enjoy is like the problem solving piece, of course, because I was an engineer, but now I get to flip that into, helping people directly. The housing market's so challenging. And I feel like the more people I'm able to help, I'm able to protect them from people who might not care as much or know as much
Yeah.
or like really be as available to help people. So to me, that is 100% the reason why I'm in this, is to give people better real estate experiences and help them move forward with confidence. And it's a lot of fun when you do it that way. You know, I think if you really care and have a heart for it, it's amazing. I will also say my experience in like corporate America has also helped me a lot because I'm able to be more professional and like maybe like more like even keel. I had one client who was she was super mad at a builder because they were just button heads, and you know, me and the other listing agent were trying to like resolve problems, and she was like, "Aren't you mad?" And I was like, "Well, I'll tell you how I feel at the end of the transaction, but for now, like I'm your problem solver, I'm your
Yeah.
go-to girl. Like I can't, you know, lean into those emotions the way I'm allowing you to, and I want you to feel however you feel, but you know, I am just focused and eyes on the prize for you, you know."
I'm like, someone should learn that.
I think that there's a time for that. There's a time
Sure,
for
yeah.
identifying with your client and feeding into the way they're feeling so they feel supported.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
funny. But you know, I
circling.
feel like that's also helpful is just like as bringing like a corporate professionalism to the industry, not for like emotional wise, but like, you know, sending calendar appointments and following up via an email and like saying like doing what you said you were going to do. And I find that you'd think that would be very normal, but it
Yeah,
is something that, you know, I don't see all the time. So I make a dedicated effort to make sure that people are getting like a very clean, organized, enjoyable, confident experience.
Awesome.
I love that.
I want to circle back to relocation.
Sure.
You have relocated to the city. You've
Hmm.
relocated from the city to the suburbs.
Hmm.
What are some tips you have for people who are doing relocation for the first time, like moving away from their home state, their hometown, never doing this before? Like, what tips do you have?
Great question. So, if you are moving into the Boston area from another state, the number one thing you can do to help yourself is to start like at least a year before. And if you can, you know, like you need to learn the market, you need to learn, you know, how much things are going for, make sure your expectations are aligned, and also just like learn the different suburbs. So, that's something that we can help with. We have neighborhood guides with my team, so we can help you like understand what neighborhood in the city works for you. If you're looking outside the city in the suburbs, like what suburban towns might be interesting to you. I find a lot of people are focused on, you know, their work commute. Like that's what determines where they're living. So it's, you know, saying, you know, you can take the T if you go this way, you can take commuter rail this way. There's bus stops, you can walk. A lot of people bike to work from this area. You know, Boston's pretty small. It's a smaller city itself. So a lot of people are walking and biking to work in the city itself, but there is other modes of transportation. But if you can start that process early, by the time that you're ready to buy, you are actually in a position where you feel confident. Because I feel like that's the biggest hurdle for out of state buyers is like, they don't
Yeah.
know. Like, and if you don't feel confident, it's hard to make those decisions. So the earlier you start, the better. Um, I will say the other thing is a lot of out of state buyers will come into town for showings, right? They'll come for the weekend if they see a house they love. I've had couples do that, and they said it was challenging because one person in the couple kind of makes the decision for the two of them, and it's just kind of a scary situation. So
Yeah.
I have heard from past couples, they're like, if like we loved it, they're like, you were great, our house is great. If we had to do it again, we would get like a short-term rental so that we were both in person and seeing every single property ourselves. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's like good advice. No one wants to hear it because no one wants to do the short-term rental. But
Yeah,
like at the
right.
end of the day, if you're buying, it's an investment. It might be worthwhile. So I always pitch that to clients now. I'm like, this might be valuable to you. Otherwise, I'm FaceTiming you into everything. I'm attending everything myself. You can fly in when you need to. Um,
Oh my God, I'm
and
just
that's
trying to
kind of the
imagine
challenge.
the idea of me being like, yeah, let's buy this house and you not seeing it. Like,
Yeah.
how and
Yeah, and
under
it's
no
just like
circumstances
they
would that
get
happen.
like not confident. They're like, I think you'll like it, but like I don't know, and like there's some things wrong with it, but like I don't know, and it's just like it's hard to like give people the confidence to move forward when they don't see it themselves. Or only one person is, or if one person loves it and the other person who's not there doesn't like it, and they're like, I
Yeah.
really don't like it. They're like, no, it's perfect in person. So that's really challenging.
I always think
So
that's
if you
so
can,
funny.
short-term rental's great. Otherwise, I recommend, both people coming in to see it if it's a two-person purchase.
Yeah.
But every single thing is unique. It's different. If you're going from the city to the suburbs, Again, it's going to be depending on where you're commuting to for work, because a lot of people take the commuter rail into the city if you're living in the suburbs. So it kind of depends like which stop you get off at. Like, some areas go to North Station, some areas go to South Station. And then we have neighborhood guides to help with that. Another big thing is school districts. A lot of people who move from the city to the suburbs are doing so because they have kiddos and they want to find a good place to bring their kids to school. So that's also an interesting piece of the puzzle. But
we have a pretty relatively consistent flow in New York, where our leads who are coming up to the Bronx are either first-time buyers who are coming out of rentals in the city, usually Manhattan, coming up to the Bronx to find a first-time purchase that's a little bit cheaper. Or we have people who are selling here, and they tend to be moving either towards Westchester County, Connecticut, or New Jersey, right? Or Florida. We've even had some Texas, right? That people go from here generally to the more suburban life, or they're coming here from the more city or more expensive parts of the city.
Yeah.
What's the flow that you're seeing, if there is kind of a regular flow? Where are people relocating to Boston from, and where are people going from Boston to?
it's a great question. I think we have similar feeder markets. We get a lot from New York, New Jersey, Florida, some from Texas. A very interesting thing about Boston is because we have such great higher education, we also get a lot of doctors, and we get a lot of people going to university.
A lot of international people too, I'm sure.
A lot of international people, yeah. So it very much is like, focused on the city's offerings. We also have, great financial districts here. So people are always flitting up and down the East Coast, I like to say. But when people come to buy, they're, pretty passionate, whether they want to live in the city or they want to live in the suburbs and commute to the city. And then when they're thinking about the suburbs, it's like, okay, well, like, how far are you comfortable commuting? Where do you need to commute to? Like, what kind of offerings do you need? Do you need 3 bedrooms in a yard, or do you need just 1 bedroom? So it's like a very dynamic discussion, because our prices are just so, up and down depending on the towns. You can make anything work. It's just trying to find that right puzzle piece for each person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and talk to us about Boston. Do you want to, give a quick
reintroduce yourself,
and like where people can follow you, et cetera?
Of course. So again, I'm Allie Davis. I'm from Boston, live in the suburbs, lived in the city. Would love to help anybody who's looking to relocate into the Boston area. You can find me on Instagram at Homes by Allie Davis. Spell my name ALI. You can email me at allie.davis@compass.com. My team's website is bellpropertypartners.com. And if you contact me on any of those forums, I can also give you information about my home buyer success workshop and my seller's edge workshop. If either of those are interesting to you, they're free, complimentary, non-committal, and I just like to get buyers and sellers educated, because better buyers and sellers means better real estate transactions for all of us. So
that's right.
happy to help.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much.